Hey, everybody. This is the Deep Thinker Society, and we have an awesome episode here tonight. We have our special guest, Aurelia. She is a light language singer and speaker, and she also wants to share a little bit of her story about being or identifying with the Lyran Starseed. Welcome, Aurelia. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing really good. Thanks.
Good.
How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. What about you guys?
Better day.
Good, great.
Doing great.
So you're in London, is that right?
Scotland, actually.
Oh, tell us a little bit about that. That's really interesting.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, we have nice nature. It's been a place that I always kind of struggled to connect with in earlier years. And then recently I've began to learn to appreciate it more and kind of understand why it is that my soul actually incarnated there and nowhere else. So yeah, we definitely have some very nice nature, some ancient trees, and I've been connecting kind of to the lands around me more and sacred sites and things. So I'd say, yeah, it's definitely good for the nature.
No, that's awesome. I'm a nature nerd myself, so I can't imagine. Have any of you traveled out of the country or to Scotland? Have you?
No,
I wish I traveled.
I have not. It's on the bucket list.
Canada.
Yeah.
It's on the list. Yeah. I have a passport, so I need to put it to good use.
Yeah, maybe.
And Scotland is on the list. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like I definitely would want to see the ancient trees. I was just talking to Carissa and Anthony earlier this week about the power of trees and whatnot. So it's super awesome. So do you want to maybe share with us your journey of maybe your awakening to being a Lyran Starseed and maybe what experiences or signs kind of led to that realization?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting nonlinear story with a lot of layers to it, but it will come out in some way. We'll see. I feel like each time I tell it, it's kind of from a different angle because I'm actually a soul braid, so there's like kind of a mix of different star lineages and like consciousness streams that come through me at different times, depending on what I'm working on in my life. So yeah, I guess a good place to start would be in 2011. Just when there was like a lot of waves of like ascension and talk of ascension and awakening around the world and talk of 2012 and like everything's going to end. And I remember that was kind of the beginning for me. Before that, it was all about angels, angel portals, seeing auras. I kind of knew a little bit about the chakras. So yeah, this would be prior to 2011. And then by the time it came to 2012, I had a kind of awakening like all of a sudden, maybe around November, actually, 2011. Could have been the 11th from what I remember.
11/11.
So all these 11/11 activations started happening then. I began to kind of see through the matrix and start to see synchronicities. And at first I felt like someone was pranking me. And there were some hidden cameras somewhere. And it was just crazy, like all the synchronicities that were happening. And then 2012, it just kind of amped up more. I began channeling all of this information and wisdom that I didn't know where it was coming from. And I would just talk at like 100 miles per hour, whoever was nearest me, whoever would listen. I later learned that's not really the best way. So like a few years later.
It wasn't super accepted by the people you were sharing with.
Yeah, totally not. Yeah, they were like really not wanting to hear it.
No idea where you're getting all this knowledge from that doesn't just readily become available on this planet yet. I can relate to that all the way.
I can
still
see
like
it.
they didn't have the questions yet.
Yeah. I'm glad the world is opening up to it and being more accepting of it. But, it's conversations like this that need to be out there so that people are more widely,
totally.
knowledgeable and accepting, because you're right. Back in 2011, this would be a really crazy conversation to listen to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I never would have known that this would be possible back then. Yeah, I felt it was like they didn't have the questions yet that I had the answers to. And I was just going...
You said that you probably thought maybe it was 2011-ish when you had your awakening. Were you seeing a lot of 1111s? And I have a comment on that, but so that's what kind of brought the realization to you?
It was like the beginning.
For me, it was 9/11, literally right before in our history, 9/11, if you've heard of it, we had the terrorism and the Twin Towers were.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And around that time, literally, I was seeing 9/11 on the clock. And mind you, back then, this, 11/11, people didn't even know what 11/11 was, but I was seeing 9/11 to the point, like you triggered it for me, because I was like, thought it was crazy. I was seeing it all the time, and I didn't, I went on to, I don't think it was Google back then. I think it was Ask Jeeves or something. And I was like, why do I keep seeing 11/11 everywhere? And that was my realization. And then, like the synchronicity started. So, like if people are seeing number patterns, then they're going to start, that's like the first real sign that you're waking up.
Yeah.
So what kinds of things did you catch yourself sharing?
Gosh, it's so long ago that I don't really recall it so much now, but it gets kind of interesting because I found out later, basically, 2020, I had a walk-in experience. So I found out later that I'm actually a walk-in soul. And what happened was I sort of arrived here in 2011, in 2012. And it was kind of like a test to see how I integrated into the body and brought the codes and the memories, the channelings. So I was kind of there for a moment, but because so much now has happened on the journey since then, it's kind of like I've lost some of exactly what that would have been, or it's evolved in a different way. So yeah, so I can't really remember.
I know exactly what walk-in is. Could you share with the audience, and maybe I'm not sure if all the hosts know, but could you share? I understand what you mean by walk-in. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, definitely get to more of that as well. But yeah, so a walk-in soul is basically a soul who there's basically a contract before incarnating between two souls. And it's a kind of thing where one soul will live part of the life, and then there will be a kind of window.
An opt-out.
What's that?
An opt-out. Like an opt-out contract.
An opt-out
contract with a soul.
Oh, yeah.
Opt-out contract.
Yeah, so there'll be the window. And then when it gets there, there's a kind of opportunity where it's almost like a bit of a life review, sometimes conscious, sometimes not conscious. And that other soul may choose to walk out, and sometimes the other soul will have been there observing previously, just to help with integration. So the other soul will then, the new soul will kind of move in and kind of pick up where the other soul left off, and kind of continue from there. So, and have their own soul contracts and own soul gifts and lineage and things. Yeah.
That is fascinating. That is so fascinating.
Really cool.
This is the first time I've heard of this. So did you, so did you absorb all the memories of that first soul? Because initially that first soul would have experienced, coming into this world, being birthed, growing up, being an infant to a toddler, et cetera, going through school and having those experiences. So do you just automatically absorb all that? Like it transfers
that's right.
to you?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there is an absorbing going on, and it's why it's quite interesting, because people can be a walk-in and actually not know that they are, because the memories are there. It's kind of like the body has its own consciousness, and it contains all of the memories, and that also helps with the integration. So it's usually, so it's not too shocking, but sometimes it can still
maybe because the DNA carries its own history. So like the DNA maybe is what has its own consciousness, and when our souls incarnate maybe in the body with the DNA that has its own consciousness, it's almost like we have to like cohabitate and like connect. So that's why like maybe there's stories that we're living out that maybe don't necessarily have much to do with us. So it kind of goes back to your soul that came in to this body has its own history that it's bringing with it into like the race, maybe the Lyran race or the other races or whatnot. But here you are in a body now, but your consciousness has maybe been so many other places.
Yeah, I see. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that before on the level of the DNA. I think what I'm aware of is that when I kind of came in, I feel that like the DNA changed on some level. There is a kind of general core level that's there, that's with the body, and that is shared. And then I feel that there was some kind of shift that happened, and a slightly different like level of records, like soul records and things in there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's totally interesting, and it makes sense too in the sense of twin flames, because they state that twin flames are often, a soul that maybe splits and experiences itself into separate bodies, and then they find themselves, they reflect each other in the life and trigger the life situations that you agreed to go through. So. Yeah, super interesting. When you realized that you were a Lyran Starseed, and then you said you also are kind of a hybrid and maybe connected to some other, what traits did you notice that kind of made you realize, oh, I feel like I'm, maybe connected to the Lyra star constellation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm trying to remember the exact first moment. I would say that it may actually have been when I was going for healing in 2017, and it was actually a psychic reader that had Lyra come through first and very strongly for me, and she also told me some of my other lineages, and then it was around then something just activated in me, and I began speaking so much light language. And I think it was through that. It was actually through the light language, which is like a kind of intuitive language of the soul.
Right.
That the first one I received was Lyran, and it was very distinctly Lyran to me. Like I just felt it, and I had that knowing that this is Lyran, and I would see this kind of warm golden energy, very expressive, and like adventurous and kind of enthusiastic kind of energy. So that would have probably been the beginning of recognizing the Lyran aspect of myself.
That's so totally interesting. How did you explain, or have you explained, or how have you shared this with like family and friends?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that. Like, I definitely haven't mentioned Lyra to my family, which is funny. Although, for a while, I did have a band with the name Lyra in it.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Send me a link.
But I hadn't even spoken to the bandmate that I had at the time about this either.
Interesting. So that's that's like the synchronicity in this of your connection. That's totally trippy.
Subliminally out through the rest of the world too. That's cool.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, the Lyra, connection to Starseed is, ancient souls, and they naturally tap into, that ancient wisdom or the
Yeah.
You know, they have a lot of wisdom of things that like maybe we ask questions of and wonder like the why. So how has it influenced your perspective in this existence, in this life, you know, and your purpose, like that ancient knowledge, like how has it shifted you?
So I think that like a lot of, well, I kind of am a like multi-sensory person, meaning like I have a few different like psychic abilities, and I feel like the particular one that comes from there would be claircognizance, which is clear knowing. So that's something that's been quite in the forefront for me in my life, of just kind of knowing things, not really knowing how I know them, and just having that like confidence about it, just coming from nowhere sometimes. So that's been quite strong. And then also, I would say my connection to music, because Lyra, it's a very kind of lyrical energy, I think is one way to describe it. They're very connected to music.
I heard
very vocal
I heard
and
some
expressive.
of your, yeah. Sorry, Anthony.
No, that's exactly, it's vocal and expressive. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable sharing your voice with us right now?
I could.
I would love to hear it if you're open to it.
Yeah, I had a feeling I might do this. I'm thinking exactly. Yeah, I think I know what I'll do. What do you want to hear? Like,
you vibe with it. You go with your knowing. You share with us what feels right.
Okay, so I've got my medicine drum with me. I'm feeling like that can be really good for kind of grounding tones, and I'll just basically channel it and see what comes through. Yara ishana uarakana ua iaka. Naviara muarakatiana ua. Irakona iana koana. Irahana uakana iakana. Urakana uyakana iata. Yata uana kuara kuara kura. Yamara wakawaya.
Wow.
Oh my.
That was
awesome.
That was
cool.
so beautiful.
That was phenomenal. I'm a huge fan of healing, and I just love just that tribal drum, just the very ancient language, and but yeah,
it was beautiful. As soon as you started playing the drum, I could just feel the drum like the whole time. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just closed my eyes and put my head down. That was cool. That was awesome.
Like meditation. Wow. Amazing.
I will definitely be listening to it again. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
We'll definitely link our guests to your YouTube when we post this, so that they are able to, get more of your vibe and music and learn a little bit more about what you're about through your music. Your voice really carried the energy of the light language, as well as like there were frequencies that like weren't, how we have the 432 and all the other frequencies. Yours, it was unique. I can't explain it, but it felt really good to listen to.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So what do you perceive your mission or your purpose is here on Earth?
So I feel like in a way, I have many at once. But interestingly, like when I go to the core of it, it has to do with sharing particular frequencies, or in a way, it's like kind of from a soul level, it's kind of understood as sharing information, which sounds kind of maybe simplistic, but I think that that's kind of at the core of the purpose. And then from there comes the things like the ways that I express it, which is like through art and sound and music and sometimes speaking, if that makes sense, and writing too.
So even though maybe you haven't told your family necessarily, or maybe even some of your friends, that you connect with that, consciousness, or that you're a walk-in, like the things you've shared with us today, even though you haven't done that, do you find yourself using your wisdom and your voice and your sound naturally anyways to kind of like help them?
Totally. Yeah. But yeah, interestingly, as much as I hadn't shared about Lyran with like friends and family at the time, I have shared about being a walk-in now with my family.
Oh, really?
But also since the walk-in experience, I actually lost most of my friends. I think I have one in-person friend left, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then one childhood friend who I see once a year.
They didn't really accept it, or was it maybe too odd, or do you think that your energy level wasn't where theirs was?
It was something like that. So it's like with a lot of the cases, nothing actually happened. It was more this feeling where I think it was that I personally didn't have the soul contract with those particular souls.
Okay.
And so it was like I shifted, and then I could no longer feel these people. I could no longer like reach them, and none of them reached out to me, and it just kind of blended out. And sometimes I don't even really remember exactly who I've kind of lost, but I just know that there's like a kind of sometimes sense of something missing, but I know that there's a reason for it, and that those connections for myself will come as well. And I've definitely experienced meeting a lot of amazing souls online.
Absolutely. So, and then maybe meeting him someday. Maybe you can come to the States and meet us someday.
Yeah.
And we could hear your awesome voice in person.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That'd be so awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a complete vibrational shift. Like the batteries that were once working together just no longer could connect, and it probably wasn't consciously in front of anybody. It's just where the vibration was starting to shift and move to. That's going through my own, awakening. I could say something very, very, very similar. Your vibrational shift internally changes and you resonate differently.
Yeah.
So like-minded frequencies and similar, consciousness are going to align with you instead of the old ones. It's going to be out with the old and with the new.
Yeah. And not only that, but once you walked into this body, you shifted the dimension and the frequency level that it's vibrating at. So the only people that are really able to interact with you are ones that are somewhere within the frequency that could actually see or hear or feel your existence. So on that note, we're all somewhere in that vibrant, energy, because we get to be here with you today. So that's kind of enlightening. The Lyran Starseeds, are higher dimensional beings, and I believe we're all multidimensional souls, but the Lyrans go as far as the 9th dimension. And when you look at, the perception of reality and dimensions and whatnot. What is your personal view on like reality and consciousness and time? And I believe everything is parallel, but I'm curious where your knowledge is at.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So for as long as I can remember, like I've always viewed things from outside time, and I almost experience things in a non-linear way, and everything happening at once, kind of conscious in multiple places at once, and seeing how it all streams in and braids together. So yeah, I don't know if that describes.
No, I totally. I personally don't experience things like all at once, but for me, it's more of a flow state. Like I have something that my daughter and I call mommy time, mom timing, where I'll literally, and it happens so often that we laugh about it, but I'll walk in like right when a timer goes off, or I'll pick up the phone right when somebody's about to call, or we know, like it's divine timing. It's a flow and things just happen exactly. But I feel like a flow state has to be accepted. Like you have to not be attached to an outcome. So, for example, maybe you want something, but if you are attached to the outcome, then you're going to carry obstacles. But if you're in a flow state, you allow even things that you don't want to happen to kind of take you and show you the path that is for your highest good, or the highest good of all, actually. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like complete trust.
Yeah. I think
that you're always where you're meant to be.
It's not easy.
So some fun facts, some individuals that we know who are Lyrans, am I pronouncing it right, Lyrans? Are Shakespeare, Elon Musk, and Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Oh, really?
Are known to be Lyran Starseeds.
I don't.
The Clintons.
I don't know.
I don't know about the Clintons on that one.
I could see Shakespeare. I could see Shakespeare, and I can see Elon Musk. Elon Musk.
I can see that.
Musk. I can see those two. But the Clintons, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
I mean, if we're gonna get on that, you just brought up a great topic to get into, and maybe won't spend too much time. But like, I'm sure you're a little versed on the different, races of species, right? And some of them are reptilian. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
What is your
I used to actually read
now we're talking Clinton
origins. So
yeah, that's why
I was gonna say I could see them being more reptilian.
Yeah, I think maybe Elon Musk must have some Martian in there.
Yeah,
right.
He's obsessed. He's obsessed with planetary travel.
He reminds me a lot of Nikola Tesla, except he's a little more stoic, or a little more like.
Yeah. He may have him as a guide.
Yeah, he named his company after him. He's extremely influenced by Tesla.
There's some correlation.
Alternate energy. That's his whole thing. That's the whole basis of Elon.
Yeah, he gives that vibe for sure. Yeah. And like that's a whole episode within itself, that knowledge right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you said that you have read people and have met, how do the people that you've maybe noticed being reptilian, how do they respond to your light?
So that's an interesting question. Like I've read many star lineages, and I haven't actually had someone come to me who had reptilian as a strong influence. So I guess the way I see reptilian is like it's from more for like removed energy. Like often maybe famous people like might have a bit of a reptilian energy to them or things like that. But I haven't really come across it like so much face to face.
Yeah, I think that they're there. I think that they're in our everyday lives and we don't really realize it. And I feel like maybe they're the ones that are less likely to want to evolve. They're the ones that get really stuck in patterns and maybe try to steal our light so to speak, like maybe tend to have more jealousy or envy and find ways to maybe try to take it from people who are maybe their authentic self. I think that maybe they're out there a little more than
maybe back when I was in school, before I kind of had my abilities open, so I didn't know what it was I was dealing with.
Right? And then now you probably have some layer of protection around you that maybe potentially
totally,
keeps it at bay. Right?
Have you encountered any avians of any type?
That's really interesting. So I have a really close friend who I know from online, and she's very, very strongly like blue avian. And I definitely have resonance with them, but I haven't yet encountered them personally very much. But I am aware of the kind of frequency that they have.
I've definitely, I don't relate or have a connection to avian as maybe some other starseeds, but yeah, particularly avians are very, very, very enlightened, very knowledgeable beings for sure.
Yeah.
What others do you identify with? You stated that you could feel that you're definitely a cross or a hybrid.
Yeah. So I think also the thing with Lyran Starseeds is a lot of the time they will relate to multiple, because on one dimension there is a kind of history where there was a kind of galactic war and the planet was destroyed and they had to move to other places in the galaxy. So because of that, Lyrans can sort of identify with a lot of races. So Pleiades can be one, because that's kind of where the Lyrans moved to after the war on that timeline. And then there's also Sirius. That's another, like, a very close one to me as well. Arcturus, Andromeda.
I feel very Arcturian drawn as well as Lyran. Right? There's something about Arcturian. I can't even. There's like not even a pinpoint. Like just the name alone, like it vibrates. Just the name alone. You mentioned the war and how the Lyran souls were looking for a new home, and from what I've gathered through just stories and studies and different people, Earth had previously, in early Earth history, like so far back none of us could even recollect, but the reptilians were here first. It was actually, and it actually is their planet, but the Lyrians made a deal of so to speak with them, because the Lyrians are actually the ones that created the human species, the human DNA, and that they did it along with the reptilians. And that is but the thing is at that time, the Lyrians, wanted the humans as slaves to help mine the earth for their own, and that's why to this day that supposedly they're there and they're still trying to have control. But the Lyrians and other souls that have came in have been trying to raise the frequency of the earth. And kind of do away. But like you said, there's a war because it really technically was the reptilians' planet first. It's just that they haven't evolved and they haven't changed, and they just want to control and kind of feed off the light that we bring. So I don't really know how much truth there is to that. And I'm a firm believer that we never really know. We just go along with what feels right. But excuse me, within that story, what feels right to you?
Yeah, I feel it's definitely one timeline. And it's really interesting because it sometimes, when you hear like the other side of something in that way, it can kind of explain the entanglements with different star races in the here and now.
So do you feel like that maybe that could be why we have so many control issues as a planet? Or do you think that maybe there's something else going on?
I think a bit of both, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something else going on too. but there is that aspect that is definitely one timeline. It's interesting because sometimes in the universe, it's like there's one thing and it has a certain cause and effect. But then in a kind of parallel dimension, it's like a different cause and effect or a different order, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to say is that this particular situation with the Earth isn't necessarily multidimensional. It's kind of like the same story across the board, but maybe playing out in different ways. Like, I'm trying to understand.
I would say multidimensional. Definitely.
One timeline running through all the dimensions in one entire existence, almost, right?
I mean, the way I see it, like I often will see like almost like every possibility that you can imagine is kind of happening.
Okay, yes, that's that.
So
yeah.
It's kind of all different ones.
I see exactly. And it's a really hard concept, because when we are in our here and now, this is a storyline that like makes the most sense. And even when we talk about it, we want to always refer to the here and now. But when we really allow ourselves to acknowledge the fact that we're multidimensional, it's so much broader and so much bigger that like like you just said, we're talking about the potential reason that Earth is the way it is because the reptilians were here first, but multidimensionally, maybe they weren't at one level. Yes. They weren't here first, and another level they were, but they were controlling, and another level they weren't, but maybe the Arcturians were here. And because we are multidimensional beings, when we're in our here and now, we feel different layers, and we don't realize that we're feeling different layers from different times. Yeah. So it's hard to say, yes, that's true, or no, that's true, or yes, that's right, and no, that's right, or right and wrong, when technically everything is possible everywhere all at once.
Technically, yeah.
Okay, I got you. I feel you. I really want to, thank you so much for, coming on today and enlightening us with your story and, your beautiful voice and energy. Does anybody else have anything that they want to like chat about before we, wrap up and give her time back?
I do. So, Aurelia, I am embarking on a new journey as a end of life doula, and so I start my formal education next week. So I'd like to ask you, what are your thoughts on death? What happens when this outer layer expires? And, where do you feel that our soul continues on after, our meat suit is done?
Yeah, so in a way, like the way that I see it is like waking up from a dream or waking out of one dream into another and kind of withdrawing focus from this reality to then be focusing elsewhere in a way that's less physical, or reincarnating in another physical place. But yeah, I really feel like we rejoin like
the collective, the greater consciousness,
the oneness,
in the
our
ethers.
higher selves, and all of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you.
What's the connection between Lyrians and cats?
Yeah, I really, really strongly feel that. Some people are aware of kind of there's a few different races in Lyra. So there are some much more humanoid races, but then there are also the very lion-like beings there. And it's funny, the name is kind of like wordplay. It's like lion, Lyran.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are a race of beings there, very ancient, and it's actually that's who had something to do with the sphinxes in Egypt. They were originally lion beings.
That feels, big cats. Like I'm so drawn to big cats and like their paws, their furry big paws. Oh God, like I could just love them all day. Anthony, I didn't you say something? I thought Anthony said something the other day about cats. Or the Sphinx.
About in what regard?
Oh, maybe it was. I think it was Sherry with. We shared a photo in our chat, our Deep Thinker Society chat of the Sphinx.
Oh yeah, you had sent it about Egypt, and then what was in Vishnu Temple in the Grand Canyon.
The Grand Canyon, yeah.
That it's exactly the same. You can tell you don't need to tell me that there was a Sphinx and a pyramid there to see that there was a Sphinx and a pyramid there.
I never saw that before.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
Crazy. I've never.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah, that's so amazing.
But like this is like 15 times the Sphinx, and the pyramid size in Egypt, it was significantly bigger.
Yeah, I can't.
And looked far older. Looked far older too.
We need AI to like show us closer to maybe what it really looked like back in that time and get like a better like perception.
You probably could. You could probably feed it some of the images of both of Egypt and it'll make something.
That'd be really awesome. Well, thank you again, Aurelia. We totally loved having you on today, and look forward to interacting with you more. And I'll be sure to share this with you when we get it all ready. I'm gonna.